The human fleet had traveled across light years of empty space, its engines humming in the silence of the void. This was their moment, the moment they had worked toward for centuries. First contact with an advanced alien civilization. The ship's commander, Captain Michael Harlow, stood at the bridge, gazing out into the distance. Ahead, the star system they had been tracking for months finally came into view. A shining beacon in the dark, mysterious universe. "This is it," Captain Harlow muttered to himself. The HFY. For centuries, the HFY had been a mystery to humankind, a species that had somehow remained hidden. Yet their influence spread across the galaxy in ways unknown. Every ancient text, every scrap of data recovered from distant planets hinted at their power. Now the humans were about to face them. They had all the hope and fear of those about to meet a giant. The fleet, a series of warships and research vessels, orbited a distant gas giant while the humans waited to make contact. The ship's sensors were already picking up strange signals, an intricate pattern of frequencies, something intelligent, something purposeful. These signals led them straight to the HFY homeworld, a planet that, on the surface, appeared to be uninhabited. As the fleet entered the planet's atmosphere, the first strange thing happened. The HFY did not greet them. No welcoming messages, no signals of communication. The silence was deafening. "Where are they?" Lieutenant Sarah Cole, the ship's communication officer, asked nervously, her fingers dancing over the console. She had expected to hear the alien race's voice by now, to see their ships emerge from the clouds. Instead, the only thing that greeted them was the cold, empty atmosphere. Captain Harlow frowned. "Maybe they're watching us, waiting to see what we'll do. We've never encountered a species like this. Stay sharp, everyone." They descended slowly toward the planet's surface, the tension growing. A few hours later, the fleet was hovering above a vast, sprawling cityscape that looked far older than anything humanity had ever seen. Towers of stone stretched up into the sky, with strange, twisting architecture. The streets were empty. There were no signs of life, only remnants of a once thriving civilization. "We're not alone," Harlow whispered. "But it feels like they're hiding something." With the fleet now in orbit, the captain and his team prepared to send a small crew down to the planet's surface. They needed to learn what happened to the HFY. Where were they? Why had they vanished? The descent to the surface felt like hours, although it was only minutes. The shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere, gliding over crumbling structures and strange formations that suggested the planet had witnessed centuries of war. Finally, they landed, touching down on what seemed to be the edge of an ancient city. As the shuttle's door opened, the team stepped out onto the dusty surface. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of metal and earth. The temperature was tolerable, but something felt off, almost as if the planet itself were watching them. Captain Harlow led the team, with Sarah Cole at his side, scanning the area with a handheld device. "It's quiet," Sarah said, her voice tinged with unease. "Too quiet. Where are they?" Harlow scanned the area, his eyes sharp. "I don't know, but we're not here to sit around. Let's find something." They made their way deeper into the city. It was clear that whatever happened to the HFY, it had not been a peaceful event. Buildings were collapsed, walls were scorched with blackened marks, and in the center of the city, a large ruined temple loomed. The symbols carved into the stone were intricate, complex, and foreign, yet something about them felt familiar to Harlow. He couldn't put his finger on it, but there was a sense of recognition, as though he had seen them before. The team reached the temple's entrance. The doorway was massive, and its stone door had been cracked wide open. They stepped inside, and the temperature seemed to drop by several degrees. As the lights from their helmets illuminated the dark interior, the first strange discovery was made. "Look at this," Sarah called out from the far side of the room. On the walls, etched into the stone, were images of humans, ancient-looking humans, walking through the stars, standing next to beings who looked very much like the HFY. This can't be right, Harlow said, his heart racing. The images were detailed, ancient, but the humans in them wore clothing and equipment too advanced for their time. They were explorers, scientists, and engineers, far beyond anything humanity had achieved at the time. Why would humans be here? Sarah asked, a tone of disbelief in her voice. I don't know, Harlow said, his voice low, his mind racing. But this changes everything. As they explored further, they discovered more evidence. Evidence that humans had been to the stars long before they even dreamed of space travel. This couldn't be a coincidence. Something was hidden here, something that the HFY didn't want them to know. Finally, in the deepest part of the temple, they found a strange artifact, an ancient, glowing crystal embedded into the floor. The moment Harlow touched it, a series of symbols lit up around the room, and the voice of an alien spoke in the darkness. You are the children of the stars, but you have forgotten your past. The voice seemed to echo in Harlow's mind. A chill ran down his spine. The HFY had been hiding the truth, and the truth was far darker and older than they ever imagined. The crystal flickered out, and the room went silent again. Captain Harlow turned to his team, his expression grim. We've only just begun to uncover the truth, but we are not the newcomers here. We were the first. The truth of the stars, their ancient connection to this forgotten civilization, was only beginning to reveal itself, and it would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. The discovery in the ancient temple left Captain Harlow and his team in a state of shock. They had come to the planet seeking answers, but what they had found was something far more sinister than they could have ever imagined. The symbols on the walls, the images of ancient humans among the stars, and the strange glowing crystal had raised more questions than they had answers. Now, standing in the ruins of the city, Harlow felt the weight of the mystery pressing on him. The HFY, the supposed rulers of the galaxy, had hidden something important. Why had they kept humanity's ancient connection to the stars a secret? And what did the message in the crystal mean when it spoke of humans forgetting their past? We need to get back to the ship, Harlow said, his voice firm, trying to shake the lingering unease in his gut. We need to analyze everything we've found. The team made their way back to the shuttle, still scanning the surroundings for any sign of the HFY. The planet was eerily silent, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Once inside the shuttle, Sarah Cole quickly began transmitting data to the fleet. But as the shuttle lifted off the surface and made its way back into orbit, something strange happened. On the communication screens, a new message appeared, this time from the HFY. Leave this planet. You do not know what you have awakened. The message was clear, its tone cold and full of warning. Harlow's heart skipped a beat. Leave this planet. They had barely begun to scratch the surface of the mystery, and the HFY were already threatening them. We're not leaving yet, Harlow said, his eyes narrowing. Not until we find out what they're hiding. As the shuttle docked with the flagship, Harlow wasted no time. He and his team made their way to the command center, where they were met by Admiral Sarah Hayes. Her face was stern, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes as she looked at the data Harlow's team had collected. You found something, Admiral Hayes said. Something that scares them. Harlow nodded. The HFY have been hiding something from us. We've only just begun to uncover it, but it's clear that humans were here long before we realized. Our ancestors were not just explorers, they were something more. The team quickly presented the symbols they had found and the message from the crystal. Hayes studied the images closely, her brow furrowed in thought. I've seen these symbols before, she said, her voice soft but full of disbelief. Not here, but in ancient human texts. The symbols match those of the Starborn, a race of humans that lived long before our time. But no one thought they were real. Starborn, Sarah Cole repeated, her voice tinged with confusion. Are you saying humans existed in space long before we ever did? Hayes nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. The Starborn were a highly advanced civilization. They traveled to the stars before we even had the technology to leave Earth. But something happened, something that caused them to disappear from history. Harlow looked at Hayes, his mind racing. Could they have been wiped out? Or did they simply leave the galaxy? Admiral Hayes hesitated before answering. I don't know. But there are old legends, stories from ancient Earth that speak of a great war, a war that involved powerful, almost godlike beings. The Starborn were said to be the victors, but their victory came at a great cost. After that, they vanished. Some say they went into hiding. Others believe they ascended to another plane of existence. The room fell silent as everyone processed what Hayes had just revealed. It was hard to believe, but the evidence was beginning to add up. The Starborn were real, and they weren't just a part of Earth's ancient history. They were somehow connected to the HFY. Could the HFY have been part of this war? Harlow asked. Is that why they're hiding the truth? Hayes looked troubled. The HFY are ancient, but I've never heard of them being involved in a war like that. They've always been secretive, yes, but never hostile. Until now. At that moment, Sarah Cole's voice broke through the silence. Commander, I've found something. Her eyes were wide with disbelief as she looked at her screen. There's another message, a hidden one, buried deep within the HFY archives. It's from the Starborn. The room grew tense as the message began to play on the screen. It was a voice, ancient and distorted, but unmistakably human. To those who seek the truth, beware. The HFY are not what they seem. They were once our allies, but they betrayed us. Our descendants have been watching. We have been waiting. The voice cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The tension in the room was palpable. Harlow's mind raced. The HFY had betrayed the Starborn. But why? And why did they want humanity to stay away? We need to get to the truth, Harlow said, his voice full of determination. If the HFY are hiding something this big, we can't let them stop us now. Admiral Hayes stood up, her expression serious. Prepare the fleet. We're going to need more than just this team if we're going to uncover the rest of the story. If the HFY are hiding the truth, we will find it. As the team prepared for the next phase of their mission, Harlow couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover a truth that could change everything. The HFY had been hiding something for centuries, and now it was time to uncover what they didn't want humanity to know. The unsettling message from the Starborn still echoed in Captain Harlow's mind. He couldn't shake the words. The HFY are not what they seem. They were once our allies, but they betrayed us. He had spent countless hours thinking about it, questioning everything they had learned about the HFY. They had come to the planet to make peaceful contact, to learn from a species more advanced than their own. But now, it seemed as if they were not the ones in control of this encounter. The HFY had been hiding something, and the truth was far darker than they had ever imagined. As the fleet prepared to move forward with the mission, a sense of urgency filled the air. The team was on edge, aware that their discoveries were leading them down a path that could have consequences far beyond their understanding. They had uncovered just the tip of the iceberg, and Captain Harlow knew that the further they dug, the more dangerous things would become. We need to go back to the ruins, Harlow said, his voice steady, but his mind racing. We've barely scratched the surface. The HFY are hiding something, and I believe it's buried down there. Admiral Hayes nodded. Agreed. We'll send a team down to the temple again. But this time, we'll be more careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. As the fleet moved toward the planet once more, the tension was palpable. The crew was quiet, their minds focused on the task ahead. Even Lieutenant Sarah Cole, who had always been the most optimistic of the group, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the shuttle touched down on the planet's surface, Captain Harlow led the team back into the ancient temple. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the very air was thick with secrets. The walls, still adorned with the strange symbols of the Starborn, seemed to whisper in the darkness. It was as though the planet itself was waiting for them to uncover the truth. They moved deeper into the temple, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The stone floor beneath them was cold, and the walls seemed to close in as they ventured further. It wasn't long before they reached the chamber where they had found the glowing crystal, the artifact that had triggered the voice of the Starborn. But something was different now. The crystal, once glowing brightly, had dimmed to a faint flicker. The room felt colder, and a sense of dread washed over the team. "Something's wrong," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't think we should be here." "We don't have a choice," Harlow said, his voice firm. "We need answers." As the team circled the crystal, a low hum began to emanate from it. The air grew thick, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Harlow stepped forward, reaching out to touch the crystal again. But just as his hand was about to make contact, a sudden explosion of energy surged through the room, throwing everyone back. The lights flickered, and the walls cracked as if the very foundation of the temple was being shaken. When the chaos subsided, the team struggled to their feet. Harlow's ears were ringing, and his head was spinning. But there, in the center of the room, something had changed. A figure stood before them. It was humanoid in shape, but unlike any human or alien they had ever seen. Its skin was a shimmering silver, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The air around it seemed to distort, and the energy in the room pulsed with a strange, almost terrifying power. The figure spoke, its voice a soft, melodic hum that echoed in Harlow's mind. "You should not have awakened me." Harlow's heart raced as he took a step back. "Who are you?" The figure's eyes locked onto him. "I am the last of the Starborn." It paused, as though contemplating something. "I was left behind, to guard the truth." Sarah Cole gasped. "You're one of them." The figure nodded. "I am all that remains of my people. The HFY betrayed us. They came to us as friends, but they turned against us in the end." Harlow felt a chill run down his spine. Betrayed? How? The HFY were once part of our alliance, but they grew hungry for power. They sought to control the galaxy, to erase the Starborn from existence. They lied to you, Captain. They want to keep the truth hidden. The figure's voice grew stronger, more urgent. "You were not meant to find this place, but now that you have, you must understand what has been lost. The HFY are not who they claim to be." The room seemed to pulse with a new energy as the figure spoke, and the temperature dropped. Harlow's mind was racing. The Starborn had been betrayed by the HFY, but why? And what was the truth that had been hidden for so long? "The HFY are hiding something important, Captain. They are not the rulers of the galaxy. They are the prisoners of a greater force." The figure's eyes glowed brighter, "And that force is coming." Before Harlow could speak, the figure raised a hand, and a surge of energy filled the room. A vision appeared before them. A shattered galaxy, stars burning out, worlds collapsing, and the HFY kneeling before an unknown enemy. It was a vision of destruction, of a future that humanity could never have imagined. "This is what the HFY fear, what they do not want you to know." The figure's voice was a whisper now. "You have to stop them, Captain. You must find the truth before it is too late." The vision faded, leaving the team in stunned silence. Harlow's heart pounded in his chest. The HFY were not the galaxy's saviors, but its prisoners. And there was a much greater threat out there, one that could destroy everything. The figure's form began to fade, its last words echoing in the room. "The truth is buried deep within the HFY's history. Find it, or all will be lost." As the last remnants of the figure disappeared, Harlow turned to his team. His voice was steady, but his mind was racing. "We have to find out what they're hiding," he said, his words filled with a new sense of urgency. The XL-FAR have betrayed us, but there's something worse coming. We can't stop now. We need to dig deeper. As they left the temple, the weight of the truth pressed heavily on their shoulders. The first betrayal had been revealed, but the real danger, the true enemy, was still out there, waiting. The truth was beginning to unfold, but Captain Harlow felt as though they were standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss. The figure from the temple had revealed a disturbing reality. The XL-FAR, the advanced alien race that humanity had looked up to, were not the galaxy's protectors as they had believed. They were prisoners of a force much darker, much more powerful, and that force was now threatening to break free. The team had just returned to the fleet's flagship, their minds reeling from the encounter. The vision of a shattered galaxy, burning stars, and the XL-FAR on their knees in front of an unknown enemy still haunted Harlow's thoughts. The warning had been clear. The XL-FAR were hiding something, and whatever it was, humanity was now caught in the middle of a war that had been brewing for eons. As the fleet settled into orbit around the planet, Harlow and Admiral Hayes gathered the senior officers for a briefing. The atmosphere was tense, each officer aware that what they were about to discuss would change everything. "Captain, what are we dealing with here?" Admiral Hayes asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "The XL-FAR were once our allies, but now you're telling me they've been hiding the truth for centuries. What is this force they're trying to keep hidden?" Harlow's gaze hardened as he met her eyes. "I don't know exactly, Admiral, but I believe the XL-FAR are trying to prevent us from learning about it. The Starborn, the ancient humans who were here before us, were the ones who first fought this force. The XL-FAR betrayed them, and now, it seems, this war is still ongoing. The vision we saw, it wasn't just history, it was a warning. A warning." Sarah Cole interjected, her voice filled with disbelief. "A warning about what?" Harlow's eyes darkened. "A warning that this force, whatever it is coming. And if we don't stop it, the galaxy will burn." The room fell silent as the weight of Harlow's words settled over everyone. They had come to this distant system hoping to learn from the XL-FAR, to make peaceful contact with a race far more advanced than humanity. But now they were being dragged into something far darker, something ancient and powerful, something they were not prepared for. "Do we know anything about this enemy?" Hayes asked, her tone sharp. Harlow shook his head. "The figure we spoke to didn't reveal much, only that the XL-FAR were once part of a greater alliance, the Starborn. The XL-FAR betrayed them and went into hiding, but the enemy they fought, it's still out there. We need to find out more, and fast. We'll need to dig deeper into the XL-FAR's archives," Hayes said, her mind already working on a plan. "There must be more information we can uncover. If the XL-FAR are hiding the truth, then we have to find it before they do." Harlow nodded, his mind already racing through the possibilities. They were in uncharted territory, and the stakes had never been higher. He turned to Sarah Cole. "Get in touch with the fleet's intel officers. We need everything we can find on the XL-FAR, every piece of data, every record they've left behind. And we need it now." Sarah nodded, already moving to her station. The atmosphere in the command center grew tense as everyone went to work, but Harlow couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The XL-FAR had been hiding something for centuries, and now they were actively trying to prevent humanity from uncovering the truth. Why? What were they afraid of? Hours later, Sarah Cole returned with some unsettling news. "Captain, I found something. It's buried deep within the XL-FAR's data archives, but it's a record of an event called the Fall of the Starborn." "Tell me more," Harlow said, his voice tense. Sarah continued, "It's not just an event. It's a series of catastrophic wars that spanned across the galaxy. The Starborn were the dominant force at the time, and they ruled a vast empire, but they were betrayed by the XL-FAR. There's a record of an ancient artifact, a weapon that was created to combat the force the XL-FAR are now hiding. The artifact was said to be capable of destroying entire star systems. Harlow's eyes widened. A weapon? But why didn't they use it? Sarah hesitated. It was too powerful. The Starborn were afraid that if it fell into the wrong hands, it would be the end of everything. The HFY were given the artifact to keep it hidden, but it seems they've been keeping it for themselves. They may be the only ones who know how to activate it. Where is it? Harlow demanded. I'm not sure, Sarah said, her voice strained. The data is incomplete, but there are coordinates that lead to a place known as the Dark Tomb. It's located on a dead world, far outside the known galaxy. The Dark Tomb, Harlow repeated, his mind racing. It sounds like a graveyard, a place where secrets are buried. It might be more than that, Sarah replied. The HFY have been trying to keep this weapon from the galaxy, and now we're the ones who might be able to find it. But the question is, are they going to stop us? Harlow turned to Admiral Hayes, his face grim. We can't let them stop us. If this weapon can help us defeat whatever it is that the HFY are hiding, then we need to find it before they do. Hayes nodded firmly. Prepare the fleet. We're going to the Dark Tomb. As the fleet prepared for the journey to this forgotten place, Harlow felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. They were heading into the unknown, into a place where the truth had been buried for centuries. But the stakes were higher than ever, and if they didn't act now, the galaxy, everything they had fought for, would be lost. The HFY had been hiding the truth from humanity for far too long. It was time to uncover it, and it was time to face the enemy that had been lurking in the shadows. The journey to the Dark Tomb felt like an eternity. As the fleet traveled through the unknown reaches of space, the weight of what they were about to face weighed heavily on Captain Harlow's mind. They had crossed the galaxy, seeking the truth about the HFY and their ancient betrayal of the Starborn. Now, they were headed to a forgotten, desolate world, a place where secrets had been buried for centuries. The Dark Tomb was located far outside the well-mapped territories of the known universe. It was in a region so remote that few had dared venture there. The very name of the place sounded ominous. Harlow couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But they had no choice. They had uncovered too much, and the HFY would not let them find what they were seeking without a fight. As they approached the coordinates, the fleet's scanners detected an enormous, dense cloud of debris surrounding the planet. The cloud was made up of shattered asteroids and broken satellites, remnants of a forgotten war. It was as if the very space around the planet had been scared by some ancient battle. Something doesn't feel right, Lieutenant Sarah Cole said, her voice filled with apprehension as she studied the scanner's readings. The debris field is too dense. It's like it was deliberately placed here to keep people away. Harlow's gaze sharpened. That's exactly what I'm thinking. But we're not backing down now. Increase speed. We need to get to the surface. The fleet pushed forward through the debris field, their ships expertly weaving through the broken fragments of metal and stone. As they approached the planet, the surface came into view. The planet was barren, covered in jagged cliffs and deep canyons. It looked like a graveyard, a dead world that had long since been abandoned. When the shuttle descended toward the surface, the atmosphere was eerily still. There were no signs of life, no vegetation, no movement at all. The planet's surface was littered with strange structures, ruins of an ancient civilization. It was clear that this place had been a battlefield, a place where something catastrophic had happened long ago. The shuttle landed on the edge of a vast canyon, where the ruins of a once great city stretched out before them. In the distance, there was a massive structure, half buried in the ground. It was ancient, its architecture unlike anything they had ever seen. It looked like a tomb, a mausoleum meant to conceal something powerful within its walls. "We're here," Harlow said, his voice heavy with anticipation. "The Dark Tomb. Let's move out." The team gathered their equipment and set off toward the massive structure. As they approached, the air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over them. The entrance to the tomb was a vast archway, decorated with symbols and runes that no one could decipher. It was as if the structure itself was a relic, a monument to a lost time. Captain Harlow led the way, stepping cautiously into the darkened interior. The air inside the tomb was thick with dust, and the silence was almost deafening. The walls were lined with strange carvings, depictions of the Starborn, their faces full of anguish as they fought against a shadowy enemy. The carvings seemed to tell a story of betrayal, of a war fought between ancient allies turned enemies. And at the heart of the tomb, hidden deep within the structure, was the weapon they had been searching for. As they ventured deeper into the tomb, Sarah Cole stopped in her tracks. "Captain, look at this." Harlow turned to see Sarah standing before an enormous stone door, intricately engraved with the same symbols they had seen in the ruins on the other planet. There was no mistaking it. The door was an entrance to something important. "Let's open it," Harlow ordered, his voice tense. The team worked together, using their equipment to carefully pry open the door. The ancient stone groaned as it shifted, revealing a large chamber beyond. The room was filled with strange artifacts and machinery, all in various states of disrepair. But in the center of the room, standing on a pedestal, was a crystalline object. It glowed with an unnatural light, radiating a power that seemed to pulse with life. "That's it," Harlow said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the weapon." As Harlow moved closer to the pedestal, a strange hum filled the room. The crystal seemed to react to his presence, its glow growing brighter. The floor beneath their feet trembled, and a low voice echoed through the chamber. "You should not have come." The voice was deep, ancient, and chilling. It seemed to come from the very walls of the tomb, reverberating in Harlow's bones. He instinctively took a step back, his hand hovering near his weapon. "Who's there?" Harlow demanded, his voice strong despite the fear creeping into his chest. "I am the guardian of the dark tomb." The voice rumbled, as if it was coming from the tomb itself. "You have awakened the weapon. But be warned, Captain Harlow, for this weapon is not meant to be used by mortal hands. It is a force of destruction, a tool of annihilation." Sarah Cole looked at Harlow, her face pale. "Captain, we need to be careful. If this weapon is as powerful as they say." "We don't have a choice," Harlow said, his jaw set. "The galaxy is at stake. If this is the key to stopping the Excelfar's enemy, we need to use it." The voice seemed to laugh, a low, menacing sound. "You believe you can control it." Before Harlow could respond, the crystal began to pulse with greater intensity. The walls of the tomb shook, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open. A bright, blinding light engulfed the room, and Harlow's vision blurred. He felt an overwhelming surge of power coursing through him, a force unlike anything he had ever experienced. In that moment, he knew that the weapon was more than just a tool. It was a force of nature. And whether they were ready for it or not, it was now in their hands. The light began to fade, and the room grew still again. The team was shaken, but unharmed. Harlow's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the crystal, now glowing faintly in his hand. The voice spoke one final time, its tone colder than ever. "You have awakened the weapon, Captain Harlow. But remember this, its power comes with a price. The cost of using it will be more than you can imagine." Harlow nodded grimly. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next." As the team turned to leave the chamber, the weight of the crystal in Harlow's hand seemed to grow heavier with each step. They had uncovered the weapon, but they had no idea what they would face when they finally came face to face with the Excelfar's enemy. And they had no way of knowing whether the cost of using the weapon would be too great. But one thing was certain. The war that had been hidden for centuries was about to erupt once again, and humanity was at the heart of it. Captain Harlow's hand trembled as he held the crystal. The room, once eerily silent, now hummed with energy, as if the tomb itself was alive, reacting to the presence of the ancient weapon. Every step they took out of the chamber felt heavier, as though the very air around them had thickened, burdened by the knowledge of what they had just unleashed. The journey back to the shuttle was quiet, each member of the team lost in their own thoughts. The weapon, this crystal, was supposed to hold the power to defeat the unknown enemy that the HFY had tried so desperately to hide. But after everything they had learned, one question lingered in the back of Harlow's mind. Could they even control it? "Captain, we need to talk," Sarah Cole said, breaking the silence as they made their way to the shuttle. Her voice was tight with concern. "You saw what happened in there. The crystal, it isn't just some weapon. It's alive or something." "I know," Harlow replied, his voice grim. "I felt it too. We can't just take this back to the fleet," Sarah continued, her pace quickening. "If it reacts like that now, imagine what it could do once we try to use it against the HFY's enemy. This isn't something we can control with our technology." Harlow nodded, his mind racing. He had been thinking the same thing. The crystal was powerful, yes, but it was far beyond anything they had ever encountered. Could they even wield it without destroying themselves? "There's no turning back now," Harlow said, his voice hardening with resolve. "We have to take it to the fleet. The HFY's war has already begun, and we're caught in the middle of it. If this weapon can help us stop whatever they're hiding, we need to try." "I just don't like it, Captain," Sarah muttered, but she didn't press further. She knew the decision had already been made. As the shuttle ascended from the planet's surface, Harlow couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the jaws of something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. They had come here to uncover a truth buried deep within the stars, but now they were facing the consequences of that discovery. Back aboard the flagship, the fleet buzzed with activity. Everyone was working with a sense of urgency, knowing that the fate of the galaxy could hinge on what they had just uncovered. The moment they had returned to the fleet, Harlow ordered the weapon to be placed in a secure containment room, far away from any civilians, until they could figure out what to do next. Admiral Hayes was waiting for him in the command center when he arrived, her face grave. The tension in the air was thick, as if everyone on the ship knew something was about to change. The crew was restless, but their eyes were all on Harlow. They needed answers, and so did he. "We found it," Harlow said, his voice low. "And?" Hayes asked, her brow furrowing in anticipation. Harlow took a deep breath before speaking. "It's not just a weapon, Admiral. It's something far beyond what we thought. We don't fully understand its power, but it reacts to us. It's alive, and we don't know what it will do once we try to use it." Hayes' eyes narrowed. "But it's our only chance. The HFY are hiding something, a force that could destroy everything. We have to use it, no matter the risk." Harlow hesitated before replying, his gaze focused on the floor. "I'm not sure we can control it. The weapon's power isn't just about destruction. There's something else there, something unsettling. We have to be ready for anything." Sarah Cole stepped forward, her voice steady despite the concern in her eyes. "We have to know what we're dealing with. Before we move forward, we need to understand the weapon fully. We can't make the same mistake the HFY made by unleashing something we can't control." Hayes nodded, taking a long moment before speaking. "You're right. We'll need to bring in the best minds we have. We'll need scientists, engineers, anyone who can help us understand this weapon. But we don't have the luxury of time. The HFY will be coming for us soon." The urgency in her voice was unmistakable. The fleet had no time to waste. They needed to act quickly, but carefully. Every decision they made now would shape the future of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy. As they moved toward the secure room where the crystal was being held, Harlow's thoughts raced. The HFY were already preparing for war, and if they were right about the enemy the HFY had been hiding, then the galaxy was on the brink of destruction. The ancient weapon might be their only hope, but if it fell into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. The room where the crystal was being kept was locked down tight, reinforced with multiple layers of security. The walls were lined with monitors, each displaying a different angle of the containment room. Harlow stared at the glowing crystal from one of the screens. It seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, almost as though it was waiting for something, waiting for them to make their move. "We'll need to test it," Harlow said quietly, his voice filled with a sense of finality. "We can't afford to wait. We need to know what it can do." "I'll assemble a team of scientists to assist with the analysis," Hayes replied, her voice resolute. "But we'll be cautious. We don't know what we're dealing with, and we're not going to take any unnecessary risks." The plan was set. They would study the crystal, try to understand its capabilities, and prepare to use it against the HFY's hidden enemy. But even as Harlow made the decision to move forward, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly, an alert flashed across the screen. A ship, large and powerful, was emerging from the shadows of space, its weapons powering up. "We've been detected," Sarah said, her voice filled with urgency. Admiral Hayes stepped forward, her expression unchanging. "Prepare for battle. This is it. The HFY have found us." The fleet scrambled into action as Harlow's heart raced. They were about to face an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. But the real question was, would the weapon they had uncovered be enough to stop it? As the first volley of fire from the HFY's fleet tore through the ship's shields, Harlow's grip on the crystal tightened. The storm they had been warned about was no longer just a threat. It was here, and it was about to change everything. The moment the HFY's ships entered the fleet's detection range, chaos erupted across the flagship. Alarms blared, and the ship's crew scrambled to their stations. Captain Harlow's mind raced as he gripped the crystal tightly in his hand. It felt as though the object was pulsing with an energy of its own, almost as if it was responding to the danger that loomed just beyond the horizon. "Sir, the HFY are launching their attack," Lieutenant Sarah Cole reported urgently from the command console. "Their fleet is large, heavily armed. They've been hiding this force all along." Admiral Hayes stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with steely determination. "It's time to see if that weapon can do what we need. The HFY aren't just coming for us. They're coming for everything we've fought for. Prepare the fleet for battle. We're not going down without a fight." Harlow nodded, trying to push past the unease gnawing at him. There was no choice now. The weapon, the one they had risked everything to uncover, was humanity's last hope. If it worked, it could change the tide of the war. If it didn't, well, he didn't want to think about that. The flagship shook violently as the first wave of fire from the HFY fleet struck the outer defenses. The shields held, but only just. The HFY were not here to talk. They were here to end humanity's journey before it could even begin. "Captain, the enemy fleet is overwhelming us," Sarah said, her fingers flying across the controls. "We need to act quickly, or we'll be destroyed before we even have a chance to deploy the weapon." "We're not backing down," Harlow replied, his voice steady. "Prepare to activate the weapon." He turned to Admiral Hayes. "We've studied the data, but we still don't know how to fully control it. We can't risk using it recklessly." Hayes' eyes locked onto his. "We don't have a choice. The fate of the galaxy is on the line. If that crystal holds the power to destroy the HFY's enemy, then we have to use it. We don't know if we can control it, but we'll never know unless we try." The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone was aware of the risks, but the situation was dire. They needed the crystal's power to stop the HFY, and there was no time to waste. The countdown to destruction had already begun. "Sarah, start the activation sequence," Harlow ordered, his heart pounding in his chest. Sarah hesitated for only a moment before nodding and inputting the commands. The screens flickered as the containment field around the crystal began to hum with energy. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the ship as the crystal reacted to the process, its glow intensifying with every passing second. "This is it," Harlow said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's hope it works." Suddenly, the ship jolted violently as the HFY unleashed a full barrage of weapon fire, striking the flagship's shields and causing sparks to fly from the consoles. The crew's footing wavered as the ship's engines roared to life, desperately attempting to maintain its position. Harlow gritted his teeth, focusing all his attention on the crystal. The energy swirling around it grew stronger, almost overwhelming. It was as if the ship itself was being drawn into a vortex. He could feel it, the power of the weapon beginning to build. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice tight with urgency. "The weapon, it's reacting, but it's unstable. We need to recalibrate before we can use it." "We don't have time for that," Harlow snapped. "We need to release its power now. If we don't, we'll be destroyed." A blinding light erupted from the crystal, and the ship's entire command deck was flooded with radiant energy. Harlow felt his body tingle as the energy surged, as if the very fabric of the universe was bending in response to the weapon's immense power. The light coalesced, focusing into a single beam of blinding white that shot out from the flagship and pierced through the HFY fleet. The impact was devastating. Ships exploded in a flash of fiery light as the beam cut through them with ease, leaving nothing but twisted metal and debris in its wake. But the crystal's power didn't stop there. As the energy continued to spread, Harlow saw something that froze his blood. The light from the crystal didn't just destroy the HFY's ships. It was reaching out, distorting space itself. The warping effect was visible even from within the command deck. The fabric of space seemed to ripple, as if the weapon was tearing through the very fabric of reality. "This isn't just a weapon," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe and fear. It's rewriting everything. Space-time. This crystal is more powerful than we thought." The light continued to pulse, the beam growing larger and more intense with each passing second. The flagship's systems strained under the weight of the energy, and Harlow felt his grip on the crystal falter. If they didn't stop this soon, they might lose control entirely. "Shut it down," Harlow shouted. But before Sarah could respond, the entire ship shuddered violently, and the crystal's glow intensified. The light enveloped everything in its path, and the HFY fleet, once so imposing, was nothing but a distant memory, reduced to nothing but cosmic dust. In that moment, the flagship's systems went dark. The humming of the crystal ceased, and the ship was plunged into an eerie silence. The crew stood frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. For a moment, Harlow couldn't believe it. Had they actually done it? Had they stopped the HFY? It wasn't until Sarah spoke that he realized the truth. "Captain, I think we've won." But as Harlow looked out the viewport into the vast, empty space where the HFY fleet had once been, a sickening realization settled in. The weapon had worked, but at what cost? What had they unleashed? And what would be the consequences of using it? As the crew began to assess the damage, Harlow's thoughts turned inward. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The true enemy, the force the HFY had been hiding, was still out there. And now, humanity had to face the unknown consequences of using a weapon so powerful it could alter the fabric of the universe itself. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back.